I've got a lovely, lovely, lovely young lady with me today. I've known her, oh, forever. Well, since she was very little. Her name's Ione, and yes, she's been really kind and agreed to me interviewing her.
Yeah.
So Ione, can you introduce yourself, please?
So I'm Ione, and I've known, like Wendy said, her for ages. And I have come on here to discuss my health conditions. Um, because I sort of had nothing until about November of 2021, and then my health kind of just went, it kind of exploded. So, the past year and a half, I've been sort of discovering about that, and I've recently learned how much I like raising awareness. So, yeah.
I think it's amazing. And as you say, you weren't aware. I certainly wasn't aware because I just knew you as this little girl to start with who was very bubbly and played with her
Yep.
siblings. And I used to encourage you to get into mischief, like go in the stream when mum didn't want you to, and things like
Yeah.
that. Yes, go on, jump in that puddle, and yes, let's play a water fight. So yes, I guess that was so for you. I imagine that happening. What, um, 2 years ago?
Yeah,
What
like a
was
year
it?
and a half-ish.
Yeah, what was that
Yeah.
like?
Scary, very scary, because it came on out of nowhere and I had no idea what was happening to my body. And
Right.
it sort of, I was going through a rough time at the time, with my housing situation, not my parents, but at uni. And loads of just things sort of came into one. I started antidepressants, and I think the combination of everything set my system on fire almost. Like it sort of went, whoa, what's happening? This is too much for us. So I started having tics, but I didn't know that's what they were. So I kind of found myself shaking a lot, struggling to do things I normally did. But after a week, it kind of calmed down. And then, a few weeks later, I went up a dose of antidepressants, and we also went into exams, projects for uni. And my whole system was just like, no, we're not doing this. So that's when I started having really, really jarring tics where, in dance, I was then copying the dance moves, but in a warped way. So there was one move which was kind of like that, when my hand was shaking, and I would just keep doing it over and over again. Or if we had to put our arms up for a dance move, I then start kind of twisting, and I was hitting things like my hands. I was whistling, making loads of noises, and it was just really intense. And I remember my teachers saying we're worried about you because we don't know what's going on. And I was like, I have no idea. And then we had the winter ball that was very overstimulating and very scary, because I started having what I guess were seizures, but I wasn't aware at the time, because I remember the principal of the uni being like, stay with me, as I was looking into her eyes kind of thing, and having my neck massage. And it was strange. And then I got home and I think I went into more seizures before I calmed down. I went into uni the next day, and at first I was all right, just quite tired. And then I started having a seizure. It started off with tics being quite violent, no, quite active. Somebody then asked if I'd like to hold their hand, which I did, but then it stopped the tics, but then my eyes started fluttering. Um, and then I sort of went into the full sort of what you associate with the whole body shaking sort of thing.
Right.
I remember holding on to people, and then I went in off with the student support officer. She originally sat me on a chair. I was like, no, I don't, I'm not comfortable with that. So I was laid on the floor. I then continued to have lots and lots of seizures until an ambulance was called and I was taken into hospital, and given a blood test just to sort of rule out epilepsy. Then I was given a leaflet for non-epileptic attack disorder, and then I was sort of sent home. And then I went home to my parents to recover. So that's kind of how it started. And it was quite terrifying, just lying on the floor being like, I don't know what this is, until I heard my teacher say on the phone, oh, I think she's having seizures. And I was like, that's a big word.
Yes.
yeah, it's a big word to suddenly have put on you. Because you always think of them as these like massive, nasty like things which you never really expect to have, and then they happen. They're like, what? So yeah, that's kind of how
Yeah.
it all started, and it was a bit crazy.
Wow. So I imagine even having the tics must have been quite disturbing because you're not
Yeah,
quite sure if your body starts jerking, or as you said, you start whistling or
yeah,
hitting things. What's going on? It must have been really scary.
yeah. It was because I remember we were trying to choreograph a dance, and my teacher was like, "Are you able to do this bit?" And I wanted to, but I couldn't. So she said, "Do you want to take a moment out?" So I did. And then when I came back in, I just had to sit down and watch. And then at the end of the class, my legs started shaking out of nowhere. And my teacher literally like held my hand and walked me around the room to sort of calm me down.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really weird because like, where has that come from? Sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the other thing I want you to say is that I think more recently you've had another diagnosis.
Yes. So obviously the NHS is what it is, and very overrun, long waits on referrals. So I decided to go private to get a diagnosis so I could start accessing healthcare options for me.
Yeah.
So I got a diagnosis of dissociative seizures, as that's the preferred term, dissociative seizures or functional seizures, not non-epileptic attack disorder, because that's basically saying you've got something, but it's not epilepsy. It's not the
Yeah.
preferred term.
Yeah.
So that's why he said dissociative seizures. And then I also got diagnosed with Tourette's syndrome, and along with that, OCB, which is obsessive compulsive behaviors, because I don't have
The
the
disorder.
full, like, no, but I do have some of the signs of it, which makes sense thinking back to my childhood about certain things I couldn't do because it would cause so much anxiety.
Right.
So yeah, and then literally the other day I had a neurologist appointment on the NHS, and it's kind of almost confused things a bit 'cause they agree with the dissociative seizures but think that they're functional tics, not Tourette's. So either way, they're still tics, but it's sort of different ways. But yeah, because there are loads of different types of tics conditions you can get.
Yes.
Eee.
So quite a lot to do within the last 18 months.
Yes, yes, because I had to take a break from my studies because my condition was getting to a point where it was too dangerous for me to continue studying.
Right.
And then at work, I have been really cared for by my colleagues and everything, but I had to take some time out to like readjust and recover because it was getting very intense.
Right. So do you find that certain things might trigger the tics?
Yes, stress is the biggest trigger for me for both of my conditions. Um, but also I found that I am now a lot more sensitive to sound and like textures, tastes. Sort of my senses are more like sensitive.
Yeah,
Same with like,
more heightened.
yeah. And then the sun is very bright sometimes, so I struggle with that.
Ah,
And heat as well is sort of something which happens with antidepressants as well. I've seen you can be a bit more sensitive to it, so I struggle with the intense heat as well.
yeah. Okay. So how do you, I mean, you've been very open. Thank you for that, because I think it takes a lot of courage to talk about this condition. I think that
Yeah,
people are still learning about it and people don't understand about it. And I know there's somebody local to where we live, an adult, and I've seen him in the supermarket, not to talk to. I've met him, I'm aware of him, but I noticed that people in the supermarket, you can see they get quite distressed because he will shout, but
mm,
that they're not, people aren't aware of his condition. But I
yeah,
think it stresses him out because when he's aware that obviously, I imagine that will induce his tics anyway.
Yeah, because that's the thing with a hidden disability, is that people don't see it. So they'll see, for example, if I start swearing in public, they'll be like, what is she doing? That's inappropriate. But they won't know that I've got Tourette's. But yeah, and stuff with like my seizures, and they're like, people are going to see it and look like, think I'm possessed or something. Or you get little comments which people might think are funny, but they're like, I don't know you. I don't need that.
Yeah,
It's difficult having a hidden disability.
absolutely. And I guess you can, it's very hard for the sufferer like yourself, but people don't know how to deal with it. They're not quite sure. And I guess if you hear somebody shouting in a supermarket, you're not quite sure, because we are in this fear-driven society that everybody is a murderer or a rapist or something. So when you hear people shouting, you immediately think it's something awful. So I think people that, what's going on? Or as you say, when if somebody were to have a seizure, they wouldn't know how to deal with it. So I think the fact that there's more, you're prepared to talk about it, and other people who have this condition or these different conditions are talking about it, it's got to be good.
Yeah, because people need to know and need to understand. We need to be able to work, you know. We need to feel safe at work. Thankfully, I do. I've got some really lovely people around me. It's just, that's why stuff like these sunflower lanyards are great, because like I remember being on a train and it was really busy and I was like, I feel really odd. I need to sit down, but it was packed. So I just put on my lanyard so that when there was a seat free, people would know I'm taking it, sort of thing.
Right. So what's the lanyard? What does it say on that?
So the lanyard itself is, you know, the green with the sunflowers on it, which is a recognized symbol of a hidden disability. And then it's got the little like medical card attached to it so people can see it and read it. And I've also got my FND one on there as well. And then I've got my little medical alert bracelet, which says Dissociative Seizures, Tourette's, which I got recently.
Oh, so they're all aids to make your life a lot easier and for others to understand a bit more.
Exactly. And I also have a pin which says I have Tourette's, which I wear at work, so that if I do make noises or say things in front of customers, they're immediately aware what it is.
Yeah.
And that stuff you can find like anywhere. I found it on Etsy.
Oh,
So
did you?
yeah, Etsy's brilliant.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is something that's really important, that people are having a bit more understanding, because we're never quite sure how to respond. I think people respond out of embarrassment and lack of understanding. So
yeah, it's the thing with, I find my tics is they can be really funny, and they have brought me people who I feel really close to, and you know, it's helped me make friends and everything and open me up, but it then comes with such a big consequence. Like just the fear of what I'm going to be doing, or the pain like that the constant movement has, the fatigue you get from how much energy you're using. It's all stuff people don't really consider when they think about it, but if you really think about it, like how much energy you're using just to move and just to live, for me, I think it's a lot more than when I didn't have this, because my muscles are doing so much more. And then also trying to stop them from doing stuff is also very tiring.
Yes. So very, 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 very exhausting and wearing, as you say, on your muscles.
Yeah, that's why I get sports massages to help my back, because that's where I feel it the most. So then that sort of shows there's like a lot of cost to having sort of disabilities. It's the stuff you've got to buy to make you feel able to carry on as well as you can.
Yeah. And do they keep you awake at night?
I get tired so easily that I tend to find it easy to fall asleep, but there are times just before I fall asleep where I can feel like my legs twitching a lot, and I'm there like, this is irritating, but thankfully I do manage to get to sleep quite quickly.
Well, that's good, because otherwise you would be completely exhausted, even more so.
Yeah, I feel like I oversleep more than anything else.
Oh, do you? Well,
Yeah.
is it any wonder if you're constantly trying to deal with this whole situation, not just your whole body, but being around other people as well, trying to manage your being out in the public and other
Mhm.
people's expectations or reactions. Exhausting all the time, I should think.
Yeah, but the alternative is to stay at home and do nothing, which isn't
Oh,
really plausible, because then it just it's just boring. It's not a way to live your life.
definitely not. Definitely not. No. Who wants to live like that? But I can hear that it could be
Yeah.
quite um life limiting in experience and stuff. But
Yeah, it was devastating when I had to leave uni because I was like, what am I going to do with myself? But I found my way through it and I found people and I worked and it's been actually quite lovely to have a year to sort of just allow things to happen.
yeah, that's great. And I think I've learned more because you have written stuff. I've seen things that you've written and explained, and I think that's been so helpful to get more insight into
Yeah.
what's going on for you. But I also appreciate it's a very brave thing to do as well, because you're allowing yourself to be vulnerable.
Yeah. So it was Tourette's Awareness Month. I think it finished either yesterday or it's finishing today. And so there was like this prompt to answer a question every day. And I was like, I'm going to do this because it's going to be good. And it was actually really great to be able to just talk about it. And then I felt good spreading awareness,
Mm,
stuff like people don't realize about Tourette's. Like, for example, the swearing. Not everyone swears. It's
no.
actually quite not rare, but it's not common. It's like 10, 20% maybe. But because of the media, it's the stereotype of Tourette's. I do swear, but that didn't start with my tics. That started about 2 months later, my swearing tics. So,
But I guess that's quite, well, do you know what? I think it'd be quite nice to be able to put it down to that. Well, it's not me really swearing.
yeah. I mean,
At
obviously, I
times you
still
go,
swear myself, but I now say, "Oh, it's Sally." I don't, I don't know why the name Sally. It just fit, and it's only been about 2 weeks calling my condition Sally, but it's been helping me to sort of separate myself from the condition almost, because I know and accept that it is part of me. I know it's coming out of me, so I will hold myself accountable for things, and I'll apologize. But also, it's not me. It's not my thoughts. It's not my beliefs. So if I'm saying something and people are like, "Oh, that's Sally," they know it's not me because it isn't.
yeah.
It's the only way really. What confused me is when I get inner tics because they happen inside my head as well, where I'll say a sentence in my head and then it'll come out my mouth. So that was like, that's not my thought, but it's in my head, but it's an inner tic.
So that's different.
Yeah. So sometimes I get a bit of warning. Sometimes I'm able to then catch it before it comes out, but sometimes I'm not so lucky.
I think there are a lot of people in this world that could actually learn to catch their thoughts before they open their mouth, and they don't have your condition. But
Hmm. But
but
there are
yeah.
certain words I am terrified of saying, and I will, even though suppressing is bad because it will make everything sort of feel worse, it's tiring, and it'll likely cause you to have like a tic attack or something. There are certain words that I will never say, and I would rather suppress than say it.
Right.
The obvious words,
Yeah.
slurs and stuff like that. I refuse. I refuse for them to come out of my mouth. So it's really hard when they're in music and I hear the word in the music. I then have to try and find a way to not say it.
Because that would
So
be a trigger.
yeah, so hearing the word
Yeah.
because I'm so scared of saying it. If I hear it, I'm like, I don't want to say it. So the tics are like, we want to say it, but I really, really don't. So sometimes you'll find me shouting no because I'm trying not to say it,
Oh, so
or it will then trigger me into being almost like seisurey, where I get frozen, stuck doing the same movement over again.
ah,
Yeah.
so Sally can really misbehave at times.
Yes, yes, very much so.
So when you get stuck, can I ask you more about that? When you said you
Yeah.
get stuck, what does that
So
mean?
it's really difficult because sometimes I will literally get stuck in place. That it's like there's a switch has been thrown and I cannot access the movement to my body. So I could be stood in a position and people are like, "You're right." I'm stuck. So I can still speak, but and maybe move my head a bit, but the rest of my body is frozen in place. And sometimes it will take someone just like holding my hands and pulling me forward, and then I'll be able to move again.
Right.
But if it's just me stuck and nobody notices, I will be stuck like that for ages. Sometimes I might not even be able to talk, or I might just be moving one part of my body until someone then says, Ione, are you all right? And then I'm able to like turn and look at them.
Right. So you need that
That's
trigger to be able to
yeah.
unfreeze yourself. Is it?
And then
Yeah.
there's also dystonia, which you can get dystonic tics, but I don't know how much mine are. So, for example, my hand can get stuck like this, sort of
Okay.
claw-like,
Yeah.
um, and it could last ages, and I'll just carry on going about my day because it's effort to try and get rid of it when I know it's going to come back, but then it'll get to a point where it's very painful. So I'll ask someone to help, and that they usually put pressure on my wrist, just gentle squeezing to sort of force the hand to release. And it usually works, but then obviously my hand will feel very stiff and like it wants to go back into that position. So I've got to keep
Right.
moving it to stop it.
Yeah.
And I've also had that in my leg. Recently, I had dystonia down my left leg, and then my ankle was sort of bent. So then I couldn't actually walk on my foot. I was dragging it along the floor.
Gosh.
That was a challenge. And then the worst is when it's in my neck, when like I can feel the tension as my neck and arms sort of like tries to push away from each other. So I can feel the muscles stretching and it's very painful.
Oh, I can imagine that. Goodness me.
Yeah.
Very painful. Yeah.
Eee.
So how would you prefer people to respond to you? And anyone really who's you can't speak for everybody who
Yeah.
has your condition, but can you help? How can you help? Yeah, help people. Help us help you.
Yes. So um for me personally, my motto is laugh with me, not at me. Pretty
Yeah.
self-explanatory. If it's funny, feel free to laugh because it is, but it'll be very obvious when I'm in distress. And then it's like, don't laugh kind of thing. So I do say a lot of funny, some quite outrageous things, but they are funny and I don't mind people laughing. But it's when I get stuck and I start getting really like over ticking, then it's like I need calming down, otherwise it's just going to get worse and worse. Um, and then it's kind of to basically just listen to the individual because like we said, every person with Tourette's is different. So some people might not like laughing at all, whereas I don't mind it unless I feel judged by you. So if I see someone's like sort of like staring at me and then sort of like laughing to their friends, then I get really self-conscious. They might not be even talking about me, but obviously my brain's going to think, oh, they're laughing at you, not in a good way. It's at, not
Yeah.
with, you know? Um, and yeah, it's kind of just listen to what I'm saying that I need. So if I say, oh, I need pressure on my wrist, it's you can do it. But if it's like I need to just sit and be away from everyone, it's like let that happen kind of thing. Um, but it's a learning curve for everyone. So if people trigger me, but and they don't realize that what they're doing is triggering, I'm all right. Then if I say it like, look, that's really triggering, please stop. If they then stop, that's fine. I don't mind that they've triggered me because they didn't know. If I have said it and then they continue to do it,
Mm.
that's when I get annoyed and find it disrespectful because it's
Mm.
you know better. So why aren't you being
Yeah,
caring?
exactly.
So it's like whistling. I don't want people to stop whistling because it's such a natural, like human thing to do, but it does trigger me into whistling a lot. So I ask that people don't copy my whistles when I'm whistling because then we get stuck in a loop and it's a case of you can stop at any time, but I physically can't. And it's not fair.
No.
So
So
that's my
it's
main thing.
basically about listening and being respectful.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
if someone were to meet you and they were a stranger, would you want them? I I said to you before the recording, I met someone who had Tourette's,
Mm.
and I didn't know how to behave,
Yeah,
and so I didn't mention it,
yeah,
and I
that's
don't
all
know
right as
whether
well.
is that okay?
For me, yeah, if I'm just out about in public and people see me or hear me ticking and they don't respond, that's fine because then I don't have to have a conversation. I don't feel judged. If I think the only way it would then be irritating is if I'm being ignored, is if you keep looking at me and keep sort of like
Right.
looking judgmental. But if you
Yeah.
just carry on with your day as if nothing's happening, it's all right. If I'm in a social situation with people, then yeah, like laugh. If I'm in a class with someone, laugh. If I'm around you for more than just passing on the street, you can interact with them. But just random strangers, if someone were to say, like, I had a comment when I was in like I think it was Aldi with a friend, and someone said something weird. Like one of the shop workers was like, "Oh, it sounds like a car alarm's going off or something," and I was like, "What? I'm just trying to shop. I don't know you," kind of thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also the one I get a lot is, "Oh, sounds like Twitter's going off," and it's like, it's not funny. I've heard it about a million times before. I'm just whistling. Like I don't need it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's basic common sense, really.
Yeah. It's just what I say to people is just try and remember that if you trigger someone on purpose, you are taking control of the individual's body away from them. And how would you feel if that was the other way around? Because that is essentially what's happening.
Mhm.
I'm known to say 12 a lot. If I am saying 12 and you start asking questions around it, it might be funny at first, but like if you keep asking me questions where the answer is going to be 12, it's like, I want to stop saying this number, please.
Yeah.
But if I'm just going about my day and someone knows that that's a tick and they come along and say 12, great, now I'm ticking.
Yes.
It's very frustrating.
Okay. I think I can hear that. It would be really frustrating. So yeah. I, and I just think some people are just thoughtless and some people are unkind.
Yeah.
And I think,
Some people can make jokes about my condition and I'll be perfectly fine with it because we've built that kind of banter and I'm like, yes, these jokes are funny. We can make these jokes, which to other
yeah,
people might sound like, you can't say that. And it's like, no, it's fine. We know that this is a boundary we accept.
yeah,
But if someone else were to make the same joke and I didn't have that repertoire,
yeah,
whatever the word is, I would then be like, you can't say that, which almost sounds like a double standard, but that's the way
no,
with
it's not.
friendships anyway.
Of course it is. Yeah, close friends can say things,
Yeah,
people that you don't know, you can be offended by anyway. I think
yeah,
you build, as you say, it's building that rapport anyway. So it's not,
that's the word.
yeah,
Rapport.
rapport, yeah. It's just that, isn't it? So I think it's basic
Yeah,
common sense. But I do think there's a lot therein about
yeah,
respect and just kindness. And
exactly.
being open to understand
Yeah.
and learn
'Cause
more.
I always say if you have questions, feel free to ask unless I'm already in a triggered state, because then I'm not going to be able to help you. I'm just going to be triggered.
Yeah.
But if I'm just going about my day and you want to ask and learn, that's fine. Because if I'm spending time around you, you want to know how to deal with both my tics and my seizures. Great, I am happy to talk about it. I got asked by a customer the other day, they're saying, because I was wearing my badge, they asked about my Tourette's and they're like, is it okay to talk? And I was like, yeah, it's fine. And it was just a brief little interaction, but it was lovely because they were like so understanding. They're like, it's great that you're so open with it. And I'm like, yeah, it's lovely to be able to talk about it.
Yeah. Okay, I think you've been so open today, and thank you so much.
No
I'm
worries.
always learning, and it's
Yeah. And there's
so
so much information out there. All you have
yeah,
to do is like search on like TikTok or Instagram Tourette's, and then there'll probably be some form of educational post. There's so many good activists out there.
yeah. What is one thing that you would like the listener or the audience to take away?
Um, so I'd say it would be to listen and understand. anyone, no matter what condition they have, no matter who they are, just to listen and respect the individual, and to never purposefully trigger anyone ever, because it's not kind, no matter what situation it's in. You don't know what the consequence could be for that individual for your little joke.
Yeah.
And it's not about policing people, it's about being compassionate and have understanding that people are going through a lot more than you can see from a surface level.
Yeah.
That
Exactly.
kind of thing.
Brilliant. So are you happy for people to contact you and kind of ask more, or
Yeah,
just make
yeah.
contact? Okay.
And if
What's
they
the
don't want to
easy
make
way?
contact,
Mm-hmm.
I have got some on my Instagram, which is public. I have got highlights of loads of information that I've like shared to my stories and stuff, which could lead people onto a whole rabbit hole. I've got my Tourette's Awareness Month sort of one as well. So
Okay. So
yeah.
how do they find you on Instagram?
It's at Ione, Ione.Alice, and then underscore.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you.
I found it really helpful and interesting, and yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.